Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the webinar on natural gas from the Gulf to the world, the prospects, the difficulties, the decisions that need to be made, the different strategies. All of that will be introduced by my good friend Naji Abiad, whom I have had the privilege of knowing for many more years that I want to to acknowledge. And he's one of the main experts on gas globally and especially in the Gulf. He has been for a long time a consultant an advisor to Qatar in the Qatar Energy Company. He has prepared a report, published a report on gas from the Gulf to the world, which the GRC is privileged to be publishing. And he will today present the report. The background is clear. We live in difficult times, in times where freedom of international trade is increasingly being challenged and substituted by security considerations and weaponization of trade relations. This has been especially the case of gas in between Russia and its traditional most important client, which is Western Europe, following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has caused a complete reshuffling of the cards in the international gas industry. We have a large number of new LNG projects coming to the fore, and many questions about the future. In the meantime, perhaps also confidence in the future role of gas has increased. There was a time when the people were saying that the demand for gas in Europe will decline rapidly, and in the rest of the world might not increase all that much. This is now apparently not quite the case. We have certainly a view of the gas as being a transition fuel, but it's a transition that may last many decades. And so it's not a source of energy that is about to disappear from the screen anytime soon. Okay, I will now give the floor to Naji. You will be able to ask questions either through the Q&A button that you have in your screen or by raising your hand. We will be able to take some questions live if you raise your hand, and we will give you the floor to do so. Without further ado, Naji, the floor is yours. Oh, I failed to recognize John, of course. Apologies for that. John will act as main respondent to Naji and will ask some very intriguing and difficult questions, make life difficult for Naji. Okay, go ahead.
My life is easy with you, John and Giacomo. Thank you so much. I am pleased, really, and honored to be with you today with this webinar, introducing the report that I was pleased to prepare for the Gulf Research Center on the natural gas in the Gulf. Let me just put some slides. ما بدي حتى هيك شيء شو بدي حتى.
You need to join from the
Give
app.
me 1 minute. Okay, now that's it. Okay.
Okay.
Let me first say or mention that in the report, the Gulf has a definition, and the Gulf is included the six Gulf Cooperation Council member countries. I mean Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, and Kuwait. In addition to this, I include to the Gulf list, for the sake of the studies, Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. Okay, let me just first start with introducing the first chapter of the report, which was about natural gas and the global energy transition. Natural gas has succeeded in rapidly and increasingly penetrating the global energy market and capturing a growing share in energy markets from 16 to 28% nowadays. That was especially helped by a fundamental evolution of its transportation economics in liquefied forms, I mean in liquefied and natural gas, LNG in particular. But will this progress continue in the future? In the next few decades, natural gas would play a transitional role par excellence, as we said, on the road towards sustainable development, which is a key issue on the global agenda for the foreseeable future. But this, despite the promising prospects, the gas industry needs to face the various actual and expected challenges, which include the following. First, the energy transition to sustainable or more sustainable renewable energy sources. Second, the tendency in many Western circles to base a major part of their energy future on renewable sources. Third, the growing debate about environmental and health risks related to gas transport operations, especially methane, including methane emissions and so on. The fourth is a growing competition from other energy sources that are not remaining passive, such as coal, with rapidly evolving clean technologies, nuclear, and renewables. And finally, not lastly, the rising concern about security of gas supply, with some gas supplying nations being unstable and many of the international gas transport system being vulnerable. I leave it now to Giacomo and John if you have any comments before moving to the next chapter.
Okay, I think the future of natural gas will be tied especially to power generation. So there is a bit of contrast between or competition, especially between natural gas and coal. Don't you think so?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's also a competition between natural gas, and I see it lately, a rising star of nuclear now. And you are a nuclear expert. Maybe you can even provide us with some hints about it.
Well, yes, I've always argued that there is a role for nuclear in the decarbonization process, that we cannot reach decarbonization without some use of nuclear, not necessarily majority of power generation coming from nuclear, but a good chunk of power generation need to come from stable, dispatchable sources, and nuclear is one of this. But I think the growth of nuclear, which is now envisaged, is in any case constrained by the difficulty of building more nuclear power plants. So there will be a growth of nuclear, but it will be limited. The growth of it will be limited. In contrast, people in Asia, especially countries in Asia, especially, are still building coal power plants, and the demand for coal is still growing. So I think the real challenge for the gas producers ahead is to convince power generators in the major Asian countries to use more gas and less coal.
Absolutely. Giacomo, I believe the one positive point for natural gas, positive, I mean, for the uh, medium-term prospect, is that we are heading for an oversupply of natural gas worldwide, especially in LNG. And this will lead, by all means, to a drop in prices. And this drop in prices will encourage more and more demand for natural gas. And this is a factor that must be taken into consideration. And this will be positive for the at least medium term future of natural gas.
Yes. It might not be positive for the finances of the Gulf countries. John.
Yeah, I wanted to add that what we are probably to add to what Dr. Naji said is that clearly the new supplier in the bloc is the United States,
Yeah.
to the point of Giacomo that this will create an issue for the Gulf producing countries because they were known for many years, decades, as one of the most important producers of gas. And suddenly you have the reallocation of this important platform given to the US. And the US has created indirectly a coup d'etat against the Russians to replace US Russian gas for US gas in Europe, and now taking up the most important position as the new supplier that will push and drive prices down, which changes the whole geopolitical matrix of the centrality of the Gulf. Yes, the Gulf is important, but the US is the most important now swing producer in many ways, which we were not expecting 5 or 10 years ago.
By
Maggie,
all
do
means,
you?
Dr. John, and we can expect some fierce competition between the states and the Gulf. And already big countries, big gas countries like Qatar have difficulties in securing its future capacities in markets. And this is really causing plenty of stress in Qatar itself, which is, as you know, is living from gas and gas development. We will see how the future will evolve, but maybe we are heading for not only an oversupply, but a kind of war prices. And this will lead anyway to a better condition for demand. And this is again the same circle.
Yes, but here we're talking about gas in the Gulf, not just Qatar. And what
Sure.
is striking is the fact that there are other countries in the Gulf that have very large gas resources, but are not really participating in this push for international exports. It's just Qatar, to some extent, the United Arab Emirates and Oman, but the rest is not doing much.
Good. This
Mustafa, okay. Hello, Mustafa. How are you doing? Saying that Qatar and its large gas supply potential remains a key global player, despite the emergence of US competition. Yeah, but that's Qatar. What about the others?
Yeah, and this will lead me to the second chapter in my report. It permit me to talk about, or to start talking about the basic for gas industry there, which are the reserves and resources. Okay, by all means, the proven gas reserves in the Gulf were estimated at around 82,000 billion cubic meter (BCM), and this represents about 40% of the world total. And if we compare this ratio to the population of the region, which is 4% of the total population, global population, this gives us an idea about how large are the gas reserves. Yet, many believes even that these figures for gas reserves are undervalued. Anyway, I have to say that a major portion of Gulf gas is concentrated in a small number of supergiant fields. One of them, especially the most important one, is the North Field in Qatar, which has a continuation in the Iranian side, and which is called the South Pars. Gas reserves, we must say it's that gas reserves in the Gulf widely differ on national level, from as low as 68 BCM in Bahrain to as large as 34,000 BCM in Iran. The gas reserves to production ratio in the region was around 120 years in 2023 compared to a global 51 years globally. We must also say that the Gulf reserves are enough to satisfy current global gas consumption for more than 20 years. But it is also crucially important to mention that, with the exception of Qatar, and to a lesser extent Iran, Gulf proven reserves are mostly in associated form, found and eventually produced together and solely with crude oil. That leaves Qatar in the Gulf with a huge scope for expanding gas output and exports. Let me here clarify a little bit this notion of associated and non-associated gas. When you have associated gas, as in most countries in the Gulf, you are not able to produce this gas freely. You can produce this gas only when you produce crude oil, and this is putting a limit to your natural gas production. In addition to Qatar, you have, as we said, Iran, which has plenty of non-associated gas or dry gas. And Iran could also play an export role, but it has first to fulfill its huge growing domestic needs, including gas injection in aging oil fields, and to see an end to the sanctions affecting its petroleum industry. What about the undiscovered gas resources in the Gulf, which are based on a purely geological concept? They were estimated by basically the only source which are estimated such undiscovered resources, which is the USGS, United States Geological Survey. And the last estimates was in 2012, and they were estimating the Gulf undiscovered resources at around 8,200 BCM or 5.4 2% of the world total. And they were mainly located in Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. Lastly, in the section, I must add that in addition to the conventional proven and undiscovered gas resources and reserves, the Gulf got unconventional gas resources, including tight gas, but especially shale gas, which are estimated at around 25,000 PCM or 7% of the world total, and are to be found mainly in Saudi Arabia and lesser in the UAE and Oman. With this, I conclude the second chapter.
Yes, thank you, Naji. Do you envisage any change with respect to Iraq or Iran? I mean, they sit on huge reserves, and they also have very large undiscovered gas resources. Is it possible that this gas will, in the end, simply remain in the ground or be flared with great damage? I mean, this is what is happening in Iraq. Is there any possible change in that?
See, Giacomo, in order to invest in a country, you need this country to be secure first and to be positive for international investment, especially for IOC, I mean international oil companies, which are interested to invest in this country. Unfortunately, it seems the legal system of foreign participation in Iraq is not so attractive until now for the international oil companies, which are interested. Shell, for example, is extremely interested to invest in the gas development in Iraq, but nothing happened since 2005 after the war, Iraqi war, and the overthrow of the Saddam regime. Nothing happened. Unfortunately, Iraq had to rely on Iranian gas for some time, and now they put a tender for an FSRU to import LNG. Although the Iraq itself got plenty of associated gas, which are flared until now, unfortunately. In the case of Iran, everybody knows that many companies around the world were involved and are enthusiastic and very keen to be involved in the Iranian gas development and the gas industry, but the international sanctions do stop them from doing that. And the Iranian themselves, without any international help, will not be able to develop their huge gas reserves.
Yes, I think if I remember correctly, the first time I started looking at export projects from Iran must have been around 1990 or even before, I remember Gaz de France at the time was interested in exporting gas from Iran. But is this? I mean, this is a really illogical situation. Is it not possible that the Gulf countries collectively can find a solution and encourage investment in better exploitation of gas in Iraq?
No,
John, do you see any possibility of this happening, that investors from the other Gulf countries might be interested in investing in Iraq?
You see, the Qataris are interested to invest in Iraq, but we have also to say that the market is not helpful. The market is very, very tight, and you are finally competing on a small cake. First, you have to look at yourself and try to market your gas before looking at others. This is my impression. Yeah.
What about Kuwait, which is short of gas, or Saudi
Yeah,
Arabia?
again,
John?
Giacomo, this is the main problem is that these countries, especially Kuwait, for example, they have, if you look at reserves, let me say it again, they have plenty of reserves, but 95% of the Kuwaiti reserves are in associated gas. They are not able to produce them freely, while demand for gas in Kuwait is increasing fast. This led the Kuwaitis to import LNG. They have a huge onshore LNG terminal, which are really allowing the country to import gas from everywhere. Even the Kuwaitis, when they started importing LNG, they started importing Russian LNG. And then after that, they succeeded to have a contract with the Qataris, which are nearby. And unfortunately, when you look at the history or geography of Qatar and Kuwait, it is very economic to have a pipeline between these two, but for so many reasons, political, strategic, and economic, Kuwait switched to LNG rather than pipe gas.
Okay, we have some interesting questions in the Q&A.
You
Riwa,
want to take it now or at the end, as you want, huh?
no, I think it's good to take them now. We have two questions. Riwa Hassan is saying, what about the price expectations for gas, considering the increase in power demand for artificial intelligence and data processing and so on and so forth that is going very rapidly? Do you think this might make a difference for the price of gas? After all, we say there is going to be a major increase in the supply, but there might be a major increase in the demand as well.
This will take time. You know it. This will take time in order for demand to follow the supply. Anyway, always when we ask about prices, my first answer is, if I know about the price, I will be millionaire now. And but everybody, including myself, humbly, I believe we are heading for a lower and lower prices.
John, do you agree with all this?
Well, let me just go back to the statement about Iraq, because you asked on the issue about Iraq and the oil and gas sector, but more the gas sector. And I think that on the Iraqi side, Iraq is, as you know, complicated, and I don't foresee the region collaborating, aligning in order to make a better Iraq produce oil and gas, or gas in this case. And I think Iraq is complicated because of the uncertainties, regulatory, contractual uncertainties, and regional divisions. So the KRG in the north versus the federal government in Baghdad view things very differently. Security risks, partner risks, and unclear investment frameworks. So, the example I always use is disputes between the central government and the Kurdish government in the north over contracts are very material, and entities, are very hesitant, large entities, to invest, and that entails also transparency issues when it comes to large companies. So I think that is one very big concern about Iraq. The other issue is prices. I mean, we seem to be in a low price scenario, and the market seems to be, and the analysts, a huge downturn to prices, be it on crude, as well as the anticipation that we will have additional supply of gas, which is the US producing more and more. But there is a caveat here. There is a cautionary note on the American side. We do expect the Americans to be there forever. And I think the market is beginning to create a myth of its own, that the Americans are going to be the new swing producers of crude because of shale and now gas. But there are certain hints, in my opinion, and these are the geological hints, that neither shale nor gas are going to be forever there providing for the American producer the stability that the Gulf producing countries have. And not a lot of people are going into the details of the geological findings because it suits them now to have this theme that we have an overabundance of supply, which is coming on stream for the next 4 years, and this is great. Equally so, I want to add, we are also on a very happy moment about data centers and AI. And I think the solution is not going to be also AI and data centers, both for the post-oil future of the Gulf, nor that we're going to see this huge amount of energy demand coming from data centers and AI. I don't think it's going to be as easy and as quickly. And I think the battle, and this is really more of a macro perspective, the battle for AI is between China and the US, and everybody else is going to follow suit and use technology. But the big fight is between these two titanic players. And we're not necessarily going to find a solution for the Gulf's macroeconomic challenges just by discovering AI and data centers. It will help, but it's not going to be a panacea. Thank you.
Thank you, John. This opens a huge topic. In the meantime, Dr. Majid Al-Monif is intervening and saying that Saudi Arabia, pointing to the fact that Saudi Arabia does have an ambitious gas program. It is developing the largest shale gas basin of Al Jafura that will increase its natural gas capacity by 60%. So the increase will be dedicated to local use to displace liquid burning in the power and desalination industries. Just recently, Aramco has signed a 15.5 billion investment deal with BlackRock to develop the field. So, how do you evaluate these developments, Naji?
Dr. Majid Monif, first of all, best regards to a dear friend. By all means, Saudi Arabia is playing an important role in the Gulf, including the Gulf, the gas industry. And Saudi Arabia can be a huge market for gas regionally. And it is good that the kingdom started seriously looking at gas development, because historically the kingdom was being or have been in oil tilted country, and they gave a little bit less importance for gas. But the industry is pleased to see that Saudi Arabia is working hard to develop first its gas, and including the unconventional gas, although I'm sure it is more costly than conventional gas in the kingdom and as imported gas. And we know also that Saudi Arabia is very much interested in investing in oil assets, in gas assets worldwide, like in the US especially, and elsewhere. And this will also lead to more and more supply flexibility for the kingdom.
Yeah. Dr. Majid is adding that the projected liquid displacement is around 500,000 barrels per day. So it's very substantial, the development of the gas.
Absolutely.
But we still are in this modality of each country developing its own gas and making plans for its own gas strategies, in some cases for domestic use, in other cases for export and so on. But without any hint of a regional gas strategy and cooperation.
We have a chapter about this. Permit me to talk about it later on. But
Okay.
unfortunately, we had, maybe I can introduce this by saying that we had for a long time, since 82, 83 actually, on the table of the GCC Secretariat, a very ambitious project for a GCC gas grid. Nothing happened till now. And
Yes.
only had a small part of it, which was the Dolphin pipeline between Qatar and the UAE, was implemented, but not as a regional one. How the situation will evolve in the future, we will see. But I am not so optimistic. And this will lead me to say one word about Iraq. Again, Iraq was the first country in the Arab world even to export its gas to a neighboring country. Iraq was the first to lay a pipeline in 86, actually, from the Rumaila field to Shuaiba in Kuwait. And unfortunately, this pipeline was closed because of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. It was used instead to pump water for the Iraqi troops in Kuwait. Yeah, you see, this was a bad experience.
Yes.
Anyway.
You say, you expect low prices, and is it possible that they might be so low as to endanger some of the exports from the Gulf? We have Abdulaziz Al Aghil asking how the gas price might affect the situation in the Gulf. He guess the Gulf will remain an important element of supply for a long run, but how do you see lower prices affecting the Gulf role?
I think the low price will affect mostly the competitor for the Gulf, because gas development in the Gulf has the lowest cost worldwide, especially in the main gas developer in the region, which is Qatar. Qatar has the lowest cost for gas development worldwide. Then you can compete with Qatar, but surely not on the price, not on the cost.
Okay, go ahead with the rest of your.
Thank you. Okay, let me talk a little bit about gas production. And we had a gradual progress, really, of Gulf gas production or exploitation, starting with associated gas burned at the flare, then recovered, then used and finally with the development on non-associated gas, especially in Qatar. And as a result, gas production in the region saw a steep annual growth, averaged around 6% annually from 1998 to 2023, in 25 years. And of the total gas produced in many countries, we must say that associated gas still accounts for 80 to 100%. And this is important to notice, especially in countries like Kuwait, for example, until recently in Saudi Arabia. But Saudi Arabia, as we said, they worked hard in developing dry gas, non-associated fields, especially in the Huf area. And this is leading to positive results, in addition to unconventional gas and shale gas. What I might say in those Gulf countries with modest gas reserves, or where such reserves and output are in an associated form, and where oil production and subsequent output of associated gas are not anticipated to grow at the same rate as domestic demand, we are seeing growing gas deficit. Okay, this is the case of Kuwait, especially. This is the case of even in Dubai. And to face this mounting challenge, these countries are either exploring or developing their gas reserves, or increasingly relying on imports. And this is also the case of Kuwait and other countries. Okay, Kuwait is increasingly exploring for additional gas resources and developing their existing ones, but they also rely more and more on imports. In addition, as we said about Saudi Arabia, an increasing portion of gas reserve, Gulf gas output is coming from unconventional sources, especially shale gas in Saudi Arabia, for example. What I must say here is that in order to start widespread and aggressive projects for developing both non-associated and unconventional gas structure in the Gulf, the countries there have to tackle the issue of domestic low gas prices. Most of the prices domestically for gas in the Gulf is very low compared to the cost of exploration or developing gas resources in the region. And this could be tackled by gradually or radically increasing these prices before reaching a full liberalization stage. However, I know that such move is to be faced by stiff resistance from the population and from large industrial concerns. Here I stop for the other chapter.
Well, you just mentioned the prices. Is it possible to make progress in the absence of price reform? Is the situation the same in all countries? Can you differentiate a little bit? It seems to me that the situation is not the same in all countries.
No, in some countries, the national oil company, which are really developing gas there, like for example in the UAE, ADNOC in Abu Dhabi, basically, they are having enough liquidity to be able to do it without an increase in gas prices. But even though in the United Arab Emirates, gas prices increased recently in order to keep with the cost of developing gas there. In Qatar, you don't need that because the gas cost and prices are extremely low. But in Kuwait, now there's a policy of slowly but steadily increase gas prices because of the fact that gas is mostly imported and at higher price.
Okay. Okay. So then,
If you have any comments, it's good. If not, let me continue.
yes, go ahead.
Because يعني we have plenty of things to talk about before
Go ahead.
reaching our dead time. Okay, let me talk a little bit about gas consumption. By all means, gas demand in the region has been affected first by its availability. Okay, it's not every country has available gas for local consumption. Then instead they are going for liquids or for other sources of energy. Demand is then affected by the supply, either locally or from regional and global markets through pipelines and as LNG. Also, local gas prices, as we just said, are also impacting the demand for gas and widely differ from one country to another. These local prices are either fixed, mostly subsidized price, or variable ones used linked to international prices. Gas demand is also shaped based on the availability and economics prices of other sources of energy, notably oil and petroleum products. Within countries in the Gulf, you have a hidden competition between these energy sources, especially oil, petroleum products, natural gas, and others, and between natural gas and renewable sources, energy sources, and even nuclear power, especially, for example, in countries like Abu Dhabi, where they have renewable sources and nuclear power now, which is used for power generation. What must be said is that the major portion of gas output is consumed locally in the Gulf, and it is used as fuel and feedstock, not only fuel, feedstock for power generation, water desalination, petrochemicals, gas condensates recycling, and enhanced recovery. A large portion or an increasing portion of gas production in the Gulf is used for injection into aging oil fields. We have to remember that oil fields in the region are operating since more than 70 years, and they need some kind of recovery mechanism, including gas injection. Gas demand massively increased in the Gulf by an annual average of more than 5% between 98 and 2023, compared to a global average of 2.3 and a growth of 3% for local consumption of oil and petroleum products. Then, while gas demand increased by 5, oil consumption within this region increased only by 3. This shows that the region is moving more for gas consumption rather than oil and oil products. Power and water sector in the region is absorbing half of the gas demand. The industrial sector is taking about 35%, and the rest by the petroleum operation in oil wells, in addition to a new transport and other applications. It is clear that the potential for gas expansion in the Gulf is considerable as the region continues to witness high economic and population growth rate. And with Gulf countries with growing gas deficits, they are facing the challenge by developing their, as we said, their modest gas reserves or increasingly relying on imports. Before talking about a very deep section for me, why the Gulf is not using more oil and trying to use more gas. If you have any question on what I just said, please raise it.
Well, we have two interesting questions again on the issue of regional cooperation in gas in the Gulf, which I know, I mean, it's a difficult topic, but evidently there is a lot of curiosity. We have Nasser Agiza, who is asking what would happen if there is a problem with navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. He might have noticed that I have a map of Hormuz hanging behind my back for many years now. I'm keen about Hormuz. Anyway, the question is, would it not be a solution to have an exit for Gulf gas on the Mediterranean, which of course means that there would need to be a level of regional cooperation much higher than what we have now, even if it is not the Mediterranean, even if it were the Red Sea, which is already a diversification, still there would need to be a much greater regional cooperation. And then we have Mohammed Amin Hashemi, who is asking, is there any way to have more mutual, bilateral, or multilateral gas cooperation between the GCC countries and Iran at the time of US sanctions? Is this, I mean, we know the situation, we know the difficulties and so on and so forth, but is there no possibility of things changing in this respect?
Let me start with the second question. Again and again, we are living in a competing atmosphere. Then cooperation can be done when there is enough demand to be met, but when the demand is shrinking, the supply is increasing, then competition will become a little bit problematic. In addition to this fact, you need to look at the strategic implication for any kind of cooperation. Iran is under international sanctions, and not everybody is really keen to have any cooperation with Iran, especially on strategic issues like gas and gas development and gas markets. Finally, you can develop gas, but you need a market for it. And we know that finding market for Iranian gas in this situation will be extremely difficult. About Mr. Agiza's question about the need for a window for gas on the Mediterranean, this is Giacomo, you know it pretty well. We together we worked on it for so many years, but gas is different from oil. We have so many oil pipelines from the region to the Mediterranean, since the 50s, with the tap line, with so many other pipelines, but no gas pipeline from the region to the Mediterranean or to Europe. Although we had so many projects, the problem is that the gas has a different a completely different economic and strategic setting. Okay, and there is a factor that nobody, maybe not everybody, know about it. Under the WTO regulations, if you lay a pipeline through a third country, this third country must open its market for the products channeled through this pipeline. And for example, I am not sure that every country in the region is ready to open, for example, its market for gas, for Qatari gas, which will be channeled from Qatar to Egypt, for example. It will be, by all means, be passing through Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure that Saudi Aramco or Saudi Arabia in general will allow gas to be market in Saudi Arabia or Saudi markets, Qatari gas, I mean, while before reaching Egypt. And this is a main issue that need to be tackled. The solution for it is to find a kind of regional cooperation or structure for gas cooperation. But when will that be done? I'm not so optimistic.
Well, I mean, I know the story about.
And we just said, Giacomo, sorry to interrupt. Between Qatar and Kuwait, we had a project to build a pipeline, but so many factors didn't play or played negative against this pipeline. One of them is the fact that this pipeline has to pass through Saudi territorial water, and so Saudis were not allowing this pipeline to be built. And for this reason, for the WTO reason, and other reasons as well. But yeah, we have to tackle all this before reaching a regional cooperation on gas and gas grids.
Yes, well, it is clear there are obstacles, but these days WTO rules are not exactly very popular with everybody, and in any case, one can perhaps do something to go around them or to agree not to apply this specific rule. I think when you consider the fact that Egypt, for example, is like Kuwait, is increasingly dependent on LNG imports, and from what you said, Iraq, the same, and at the same time has two LNG plants that are not operational for lack of gas. On the Mediterranean, exactly. In the case of Iran, there has been discussion in contracts even signed to export Iranian gas regionally to Sharjah, for example, a contract with Crescent Petroleum. That has been in arbitration, I guess, for the best part of more than 10 years now. And there has been talk about exporting Iranian gas to Oman. I mean, so many opportunities. And at some point,
you have so many talks, but nothing happened.
Yeah, I know,
there must be a reason for it.
At some point, surely the situation must change, right? I mean,
Yeah, inshallah.
John, you are.
Yes, inshallah. Yes, inshallah, never. Yes, one day, hopefully, God willing.
God willing.
No, I think that you're pointing to all the right arguments, of course. I mean, Gulf gas could very well be piped via Jordan as well, or swapped through some kind of a regional trading mechanism. Instead of piping it, there can be regional trade. But the issue is that, as you said, Giacomo, neither Egypt is utilizing, due to gas constraints, its infrastructure, nor is there initiative from the GCC to promote this idea. I would think that, especially now that the UAE commands a lot of influence on Egypt, that idea could be floated. Yet again, Qatar gas would not be the priority on UAE's list when it comes to Egypt. It will be UAE's priorities on Egypt's economy than anything else. And I think the technical barriers can be overcome. I think politics seems to be the issue dominating still, because it will require sort of unprecedented trilateral, if not quadrilateral alignment amongst Saudi, Jordan, Egypt, and possibly even Israel, if we are to use the name of Israel. So I think pragmatic energy diplomacy needs to resurface, and then if we do that, then what will be the mix of natural gas to the supply of the European market? Because the Americans are very happy to now be at the forefront of providing natural gas come late this year, beginning of 2026, as they take out the Russian gas. So if Gulf gas becomes a competitor to the US, how will the US react to all of this? That will be very interesting. And then finally, to add to what Giacomo you said about the criticism or a correct approach to viewing the WTO, I think nobody really cares much about the WTO anymore. In the day of Trump 2.0, if there is anything, WTO is just a sleepy institution that hires people to write reports which they read within the institution, but nobody really cares much about WTO nowadays.
Yes, my point is just that we don't live in normal times.
Exactly.
The whole
Exactly.
process of globalization is crumbling and giving way to increasing, contraposition of economic blocks that trade within themselves, but don't like to trade with each other, use different currencies, and so on and so forth. So the space for a globalist strategy of exporting gas to wherever in the world might be narrowing down, and the importance of concentrating on finding solutions for the regional market might be increasing. So although countries in the region don't find it easy to deal with each other, the incentive to do so is, I believe, increasing. I think it would be important to start thinking about this, and again pointing to the absurdity of the current situation, revisiting what has been happening until now, and looking for practical, pragmatic, as you said, solutions. Don't you think so?
Giacomo, the whole point is you need a political will. If you have a political will, everything will be done in this region. I can give a famous example, which is the Dolphin Pipeline. The Dolphin Pipeline is a result of a political will between Qatar and the UAE. Okay, the prices that is paid or for the Qatari gas is nothing, but the political will is there, and the Qataris are providing a huge amount of gas since 2007 for the Emirates and Oman. Okay, and this is really working without any problem, even during the crisis between Qatar and the UAE in 2016 to 2021. You need a political will, and with this, everything will be done very smoothly. Unfortunately, you have so many projects on the table on paper, but nothing happened because of the lack of political will. Just to finish from this issue and move to the other one because of our lack of time. We had a project. I was in Qatar at that time. We had a project of building a bridge between Qatar and Bahrain. And under this bridge, to build a gas pipeline from Qatar to the Bahraini. Nothing happened. No, nor the bridge, nor the gas pipeline. Instead, the Bahraini built a importing LNG terminal.
Very
Anyway,
good.
and the distance between Qatar and Bahrain is maybe 30 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we will allow you to go on with this, with your presentation, but I think, we should keep in mind that this is an area that deserves further
Absolutely.
research, investigation, and arguing on the part of poor experts like we
us.
are. Go ahead, Najib.
Okay. Before talking about the inter Gulf gas trade, which is partly what we just talked about, just a question: why this country or this region of the world, which got around 48% of the oil reserves, 48% of the global oil reserves, okay? Why this region would not be interested to use more oil and oil products rather than gas? Why they insist to have gas? This is a question that can be asked by everybody who is not really aware of the region and its economics. First of all, there are so many reasons, but first of all, we are living in a region where environmental issues are gaining more and more importance. Then burning oil for power generation, for example, is polluting and is not so encouraged by the population itself. Second, and this is important, it is costly because most of these countries are OPEC member states. And in the OPEC quota, which are still valid until now, the OPEC system, OPEC quota system, the quota system is based on production, not on export. That means that whatever you consume domestically is taken from your quota. Then whatever, if you use more oil internally, then you are losing from your export revenues in a way or another. Okay, then this is very important. Third, there is a loss in export revenues. Why? Because oil products domestically sold and consumed are sold at very low price when it is compared to export prices. And then whatever you consume locally is really at loss when you compare it to export prices. Third, or fourth, if you will use more gas, you are saving on the cost of new refineries, and you will keep the saved oil and oil products for export. This is very logical. And finally, one of the reasons why we have to use gas is because some industrial application needs gas as a suitable fuel, especially for power generation. And we know, for example, that using gas for power generation is not less than 66% of efficiency compared to 30 to 40% for oil power generation fuel. That's it. Let me continue by talking about intergulf gas trade. And here we can talk plenty about and continue our discussion. By all means, to face their growing gas deficit, few Gulf nations have had recourse to gas resources in neighboring countries. This is especially true for the UAE, which is importing gas from Qatar. In addition to Oman, especially the northern part of Oman, the Suhar industrial city. Iran is also exporting a little bit of gas to Iraq recently, although this export were lately stopped. Iran is exporting its gas also to Turkey, into Armenia. Armenia not only on seasonable basis, but otherwise the whole gas export is destined to outside export markets, especially to Asia, a little bit to Europe. The intergulf gas trade is extremely weak, representing in 2023 around 21% of the total gas trade involving the region, and some 3.7% of the global gas trade. As we said, it consists of gas pipeline exchanges with the UAE and Oman from Qatar. It consists also of some LNG from Qatar to Kuwait, to UAE, especially to Dubai. But this is also to Dubai, it is on seasonable basis, but to Kuwait on a long-term contract, which is a good move. As we said, Iran is exporting gas to Iraq through a pipeline system. In fact, only few gas pipelines have been built within the Gulf. I mentioned the short-lived Iraq-Kuwait pipeline. The most successful gas pipeline in the region is by all means the large Dolphin project, which is challenging around 20 BCM of gas every year. And lately we have a small link between Iraq and Iran. I must say that we are seeing some increasing exchange of LNG within the Gulf itself, especially from Qatar to Kuwait, as we mentioned, or from Qatar to Abu Dhabi, to Dubai. And this could increase in the future, especially if you have any problem with Hormuz. Because if you have any problem with Hormuz, then you can maybe look at channeling your LNG regionally. Finally, a small word about gas pipelines in the region. Why they are not so successful until now? You have the issue of transit fees. which is in nature or in money terms, it could be problematic. It could affect the whole economics of gas pipeline. We have the transit issues and WTO issues I just mentioned. We have the energy independence and self-sufficiency tendency in most Gulf countries. Every Gulf country wants to be self-sufficient, and they are so proud of having so much oil and gas, even if this oil and gas is not enough for their domestic needs. But they have this tendency to be self-sufficient and not to rely on others. And this is important, not to rely on others for any energy needs. And unfortunately, I must say it, for example, they cannot rely on pipeline which could be closed at any moment. And this is important. Then you need to have an atmosphere in the Gulf where everybody is trusting everybody and everything is really smoothly interchanged. That's it for now. Before moving to the export of gas, Gulf gas. If you have any comments, I am ready.
I think you should go on and quickly cover the rest of your report because we have less than 15 minutes left. And
Good. Okay. The chapter on export of Gulf gas, I was analyzing the share of the Gulf in the international gas trade, which increased from just 5% in 98 to 13% in 2023. Gulf LNG amounted to more than 24% of the world total. It is originating from Qatar, especially Qatar, Oman, and the UAE. Large LNG projects are currently operating in Qatar, with Qatar got a total capacity, actual capacity of 77 million tons per year, Oman 10.4, and the UAE, especially Abu Dhabi, 5.8 million tons per year. I must also say, because we covered Yemen in our report, that Yemen got a plant for 7.2 million tons per year, but it is not it's not operational currently because of the civil war there. The market for Gulf LNG are in Asia, especially in Asia. This is the main niche for Gulf gas or Gulf LNG, bit of Europe, especially after the crisis, Ukrainian crisis, I mean. South America is getting more importance for the Gulf, and also an important market for the Gulf itself is the Gulf itself. As we mentioned, the Kuwait, Dubai, and the Middle East. Middle East, I mean, Iraq could be a good market for the Gulf LNG or gas. Jordan, Lebanon in the future, and who knows, maybe Saudi Arabia could also be importing LNG from the Gulf itself. By all means, the Gulf is keen to play a growing role on the world gas market based on its important advantage, such as its ample reserves and low development and production costs, and its strategic geographical location. Based on this advantage, Gulf LNG exporters are implementing large expansion programs. Just to mention that Qatar will mostly double its gas liquefaction capacity from 77 billion tons to 142 in 2029 or 2030. Abu Dhabi will increase from 5.8 to 15.5, also at the end of this decade, and Oman as well will grow its LNG capacity from 10.4 to 15.2 by 2029. But these Gulf gas developer need to coordinate their marketing policy rather than implicitly and increasingly competing for customers. And maybe this is normal because the market is tough now, but they need basically to coordinate their expansion program. We don't have to have so many idle capacity dormant and staying ineffective because of competition. We need to coordinate our expansion program. In addition, or in fact, all these three main gas exporters from the Gulf are facing challenges, and these challenges are affecting all of them. And these challenges include, first, the liberalization of the European gas market with free destination and shorter agreements. And this also is putting so much problem, for example, between the European Union and Qatar. The energy transition strategy in the EU new green regulations on methane emissions that create new burden on LNG players, the global tendency to rely more and more on renewable energies, the fierce competition from growing suppliers, leading to a period of global oversupply and lower price, especially from the US, as we just said, and the security of the maritime waterways connecting the Gulf to the international market, pushing, and this we saw in the Bab el-Mandeb because of the Houthi attacks on the petroleum tankers in the region. We could see that, God forbid, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, this will create a big international crisis. And all this is, I will add, I will end by this, saying that this security issues affecting the Gulf maritime waterways and channels are pushing Gulf gas developer to seek and acquire gas liquefaction assets outside the area, especially in the US. We see this by the Qatari, which were the first to acquire the Golden Pass, for example, in the US. The UAE, especially ADNOC and Abu Dhabi, which are acquiring so many assets there in the US, Saudi Arabia even, with Sempra and others. And this is really putting a new strategy for gas expansion for the Gulf gas developers.
Thank you, Naji. I think we need to stop here. And before we close the webinar, I would like to ask Dr. John, I mean, how do you see the role of gas and the potential of industry based on gas or maybe blue hydrogen in the context of the overall process of economic diversification in the Gulf?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. I think that the other pathway to use the plentiful gas, the gas that Saudi Arabia is exploring and possibly successfully producing, and all the other countries, is to help incentivize industry. And I think this is how the Gulf should be perceiving gas, not necessarily just as an export item, but also as an incentive for cheap feedstock that goes into the industrial plants. And there could be a possibility for the Gulf to go beyond its current industrial development and truly transform itself. Because one of the challenges the region had, Giacomo, for a long time, as you know, was that for Saudi Arabia, it didn't have plentiful gas to provide for industry. Now we're hearing that there will be more gas, and could be that instead of looking for the export market into Europe, this is what will change the chess game on industrial growth in the Middle East, in the Gulf. It could be that it feeds into the industrial goals of the region, even if there is additional competition within the region. I hold low expectation that the region is going to suddenly find alignment on economic growth. I think competition will continue to increase. But however, through competition, there could be some true gems of national champions for Saudi Arabia, for the UAE, for Oman, that could then catapult the region into a new industrial age. The region is based fundamentally for a long time on the pedestal of cheap energy. And suddenly making that transition to more expensive energy is making the region less competitive. And I'll give an example. Not too long ago in Saudi Arabia, we've seen the increase of diesel price from around 1 Riyal 10 halalas to 1 Riyal 50 halalas. And that has transformatively changed the industrial possibility of a certain segment of Saudi Arabia's economy. So cheap energy, cheap gas could be the future for industry and the dreams of the region to be leading this industrial growth, not necessarily creating plentiful jobs, but it does create value added for the economy.
Yes, thank you, John, for this reflection. I have always been convinced that natural gas could be a lever for economic diversification. And certainly, you know, if you look at the experience of the United States, if instead of the United States we had an independent state of Louisiana, an independent state of Texas, an independent state of New Mexico, and so on, and no pipelines in between them, or almost no pipelines in between them. You know, what we see today as the role of natural gas and hydrogen in developing industrial activity in these states would not be there. Competition is a different thing because, you know, LNG developers in the United States do compete with each other, even very ferociously. But at the same time, you have an integrated gas market with a transparent price, which is arrived at. It's a competitive price that is arrived at, and that encourages both local utilization and exports. I think you know, the Gulf countries, the Gulf region must look at the experience of the United States and see how that translates into solving their own problems. So that's the next task for Naji in studying the topic.
Maybe I can add, you permit me to add one word about the production and export of blue hydrogen from the region. We have seen so many projects for producing blue hydrogen from natural gas in the region, especially in Oman, a little bit in the UAE and Qatar. But because of the problem of transporting and moving hydrogen to the main consuming markets, I believe it is more economic and feasible to export natural gas to the main consuming markets and there to switch it or to transform it to blue hydrogen if it
you know,
or
use
to any
blue
other thing.
hydrogen locally to
Yeah.
produce decarbonized steel, decarbonized fertilizer,
Absolutely.
decarbonized everything, which would greatly contribute to economic diversification. I think we need to close the webinar. Thank you very much, Yanaji. Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, the Gulf Research Centers and all that contributed to this. Thank you to our participants. And we will continue to follow developments in the gas field for sure.
Thank you
Take
so much
care.
for allowing me to be there. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.